Hey, welcome back. I'm Mrs. Baranyk, and this is video 3 of my series for AP World History answering the question, how did we get here? Covering material that's significant to your understanding of the course, but that's no longer covered since we became AP World History Modern. In video 2, we were going through the pieces of ancient civilizations and covered politics, innovations, and the economy. Today, we'll talk about general trends in the development of culture, how people interacted with the environment, and society. Culturally, the ancient world was incredibly rich. While most people were polytheistic, believing in many gods and goddesses, the first monotheistic religions, where only one goddess follow, emerged in this period. In Persia or modern-day Iran, the monotheistic religion Zoroastrianism began around 2000 BCE. Zoroastrians are still around today, but they're a very small group and are usually called Parsis. The one Zoroastrian student that I ever met told me every Zoroastrian in Chicago has a key to their temple since the community is so small. In South Asia, Hinduism got its start around the same time, and in West Asia, around 1800 BCE, Judaism emerged as a man named Abraham made a covenant or a promise to worship only one God. We'll get into the details of these important religions later. Literature that wasn't just for record keeping also started in this era. The image on the right side of the screen is the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, one of the world's first awesome adventure stories. It has heroes, gods, quests. This story has it all. Totally worth reading. One of the things Gilgamesh was known for in that story was building huge walls around his city of Uruk, and build they did. Pyramids in the Nile Valley in Mesoamerica, temples and walls in Mesopotamia and the Indus River Valley. These displays of wealth and organizing abilities of the leaders were everywhere. The beginnings of modern culture were off to a very good start. Another thing that changed in these early civilizations is how humans interacted with the environment and how they were affected by it. Humans began to reshape the land in ways that served them. They created irrigation canals and other inventive ways of moving water so that they were able to intensify their use of the land. Instead of wandering large areas and spending their day looking for foods that grew in the wild, they grew crops and picked seeds from the best varieties of what they grew, so that eventually they changed these plants over time to yield more food. They did the same thing with animals. Some people grew only one or two crops, though, and that could be a real problem if there was some kind of blight that took hold of their fields. Plant sickness wasn't the worst of it, though. As we've seen recently with COVID-19, when humans and animals are in close contact, diseases can spread. And soon, illnesses that had impacted only animals in the past were racing through human populations who were living in closely together in highly populated cities. The epidemics which hunter-gatherer societies had never experienced killed many people. The last of the pieces of early urban civilizations that we'll look at together is social structure. What emerged in these earliest societies were ways to organize people based on power, wealth, gender, and legal status. Social hierarchies are often represented by a pyramid, like you see on the screen. This is because there are usually less of those at the top, the wealthy and powerful, and more of those at the bottom, the poor and powerless. Strangely, societies still pretty much look like this today. Maybe not with all of the same parts, but the same general structure. Another factor that changed from earlier hunter-gatherer societies was that gender inequality emerged. Remember, hunter-gatherer societies were more egalitarian because men and women were equally important to the survival of the group. But these ancient civilizations were almost all patriarchal, and that means that men dominated positions of power and influence, while women had less and less. There are many reasons for this, but in most, women were tightly controlled because suddenly property had value, and men wanted to make sure that the children they would pass it on to were genetically theirs. So they limited women's ability to be around other people pretty tightly. This led to women having far fewer opportunities. Patriarchy, unfortunately, is one of those continuities in world history that you'll be learning about all year. And lastly, many but not all of these societies used coerced labor systems, which you probably know better as the labor of enslaved people. This was not race-based slavery, the kind that dominated history after the 15th century. Those who were enslaved were usually prisoners of war, people who had been convicted of crimes, and people who were in debt. Now, don't get the wrong idea. Not everyone settled down at the same time in world history. While these civilizations thrived, there were still hunter-gatherer societies and also pastoralists. Pastoralists are people who rely on domesticated animals for survival, using their meat, milk, hides, and bones. They tend to be nomadic because they need to move their animals to where there are grazable lands, and they were incredibly important for these ancient urban civilizations. Because they moved around a lot, they were introduced to new technologies often, and then turned around and introduced them to other people. The relationship between settled urban societies and pastoralists can be described as raid or trade. They either raided them for goods or traded with them. It's believed that pastoralist groups introduced iron weapons, chariots, stirrups for horseback riding, and much more to these civilizations. And as I said in my last video, if they were introducing people to new goods, they were also introducing them to new ideas and beliefs. Hey, thanks for watching. Video 4 will take us into the classical era from 600 BCE to 600 CE.